Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for Stars of Franchising.
Get ready for a roller coaster ride through the world of franchising as we bring you the best stories of inspiration and entrepreneurial grit and turning dreams into franchise realities.
That's right, Vinnie. From emerging to global brands, we'll chat with the genius minds behind the magic. All brought to you by the Tariq Farid Franchise Institute at Babson College. I'm Ab.
And I'm Vinnie. Now, buckle up for some serious inspiration.
Today on Stars of Franchising, we welcome Patrick Cunningham to the show. Long history of franchising. Patrick, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks so much, Ab.
We're so excited to have you and share some of your stories and experience and challenges. And as we usually do, we love to start with a little background on yourself for those who may not know you, an overview, but also, your purpose and your why, what calls you to do what you do, Patrick.
Yeah. So I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I started in franchising in 1997. So coming up on the 30-year mark.
Yeah.
Started in franchising with Domino's Pizza as a field consultant. Was there for about 5 years. Moved over to Dunkin when they were Dunkin' Donuts,
Right.
and I was there. I was there for about 20 years in various roles, operations and business development, franchising, and ultimately leading Dunkin' and Baskin franchising under Inspire Brands. Spent a few years as VP of development at Little Caesars, 2.5 years, as a matter of fact, which included franchise development and non-traditional asset management and architecture design. And then now I'm CDO at Bobby's Burgers and have been here since June of this year. And honestly, what brings me here? It's listen, I like to make people better, organizations better, make more of an impact. That's what has me here.
Love it. So you've obviously seen and experienced brands at very different stages in their life cycle. So that's exciting. Well, you studied business at St. Francis, correct? And did you have any idea that franchising or the restaurant industry would be a pathway for you, or you could see yourself working in the industry?
I can honestly say that the restaurant industry had never crossed my mind when I was studying at school. I didn't work in restaurant. I think I was a short order cook on the Point Pleasant boardwalk for like a month and a half one summer.
Yeah.
But a lot of my family were entrepreneurs, and so I wasn't thinking down that path. And I actually didn't start in the restaurant industry.
Okay.
Out of school, I started working for a chemical company. And I was in finance for them and then marketing and sales. So I did build a strong foundation to be able to cross into other industries. And that's ultimately how I found Domino's, with kind of that cross-functional experience that I earned early on.
Well, that's perfect because we see that, and I know you see it, and here at the Tariq Farid Franchising Institute, we're trying to explore folks that someone like you can have an amazing career and background in franchising and brands, et cetera. So that's no surprise that you maybe didn't target it, because a lot of our students and folks in franchising share that same experience. So let's go to those early days when you joined Domino's. Once you got in there, was there something that drew you to stay in franchising, and what were some of the big lessons from some of those days with that incredible brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back to my first 5 years not in franchising, right? And so I was there. I ended up in sales, selling molecular sieves and silica gels of all things. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I was kind of odd man out. I was surrounded by chemical engineers, and I knew that probably wasn't the path for me. And so there was somebody I was very close to at Domino's Pizza who said they're looking for a franchise consultant and to help coach their franchisees and many of the things that I had experience in. It was an internal franchising environment. So there were many people that were great shift leaders and great managers that found themselves to be franchisees. And I was able to coach them. So I thought that was really cool. To go from selling molecular sieves and silica gels to being in the pizza business, right? And one of the giants, as you mentioned. So I took the leap and I moved from Maryland to New Jersey, took a territory in New Jersey, and off I went. And I got to tell you, it's a lot more fun talking about pizza at parties than it is molecular sieves. That's what kind of got me over into it.
Sure. Now, in that role, if you could explain for our audience and listeners, in the franchisor-franchisee relationship, right? The role that business coach, different brands call it something else. You're ultimately trying to improve performance of franchisees, correctly? Many times people think it's enforcement. What'd you learn in that role that the best Zors and Z's do, or what should we know about that?
Yeah, right. It's a lot of people go to that, right? Oh, you're an enforcer, you're a checklist guy. Yeah, it's not, right? Your role is to build the business. So whatever territory you have, whatever geography you have, right? You're building the business through a variety of different tactics, right? And you know what? Sometimes it may be enforcement, right? If you have an opportunity to step up your level of operations through enforcement because standards aren't being hit, okay, that's a tactic you can use. But I would say this, the biggest thing that I learned at Domino's was to get into the franchisee's shoes, right? It was my first step into the pizza business, get behind the counter, make pizzas during the rush. We wore the staff uniforms as field consultants when we were visiting restaurants. And so to establish and build those relationships was critical because you can have any conversation with a franchisee if you have a solid relationship and walk away from it continuing to build the business together. And to me, that's the foundation of everything I've learned in the franchising business is build the relationship. And I learned that in those early days.
I love it. And that's great advice also for franchisees to be open for that sort of support and advice and guidance, and that you are partners, not adversaries, even though you may disagree on things. So that's great advice. And our friend and your former peer or colleague, or maybe not, Nigel Travis, in the Dunkin days used to stress, and he stressed when he was a guest in our classes, the importance of being in the field and in the stores. So I love that, and it sounds like the great brands do that. Well, let's go to your nearly 2 decades at Dunkin brands, starting with Dunkin' Donuts, where you really helped them and were part of the team to expand Dunkin' and the Baskin Robbins brands. Can you talk a little bit at some of the most exciting challenges you had and maybe how you overcame them and helped the company grow?
Yeah, and again, I probably had. And by the way, going back to the last question, there was one of our leaders, and he was actually under Nigel. I won't name him by name. Used to say to us, listen, take the contract and put it in the drawer, by the way, right? You only pull the contract out if you need to pull the contract out, because relationships are founded upon contracts being in the drawer. I thought that was always great, how the advice he gave us.
And you're referring to the franchise agreement, which is typically 10 years, and it's some say like a marriage. Mm-hmm. I love that advice, because if you get to that point, right, Patrick, it's too late.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. So it was advice that I always adhered to, and it worked well. But you're going back to the time at Dunkin'. I probably had 10 different titles. I haven't counted it up, between discipline changes, promotions, just organizational shifts. And look, we went from being owned by a spirits company to owned by private equity, Carlyle, Bain, Thomas Lee. We went public. Then we were taken private by Inspire. So there's a lot to choose from, right, in those different times. And as I think back on it, on a macro scale, I think adjusting from being privately held to publicly held, and understanding what it meant to be accurate with forecasts and living by those forecasts and doing what you needed to do to hit those forecasts, it really meant something, right? And go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's your point is spot on, and it's interesting because That's great advice also for leaders who are contemplating private equity investments, going public, different requirements, right? So you've seen it along a lot of different stages. We get the question sometimes, Patrick, as if a company is recently bought by private equity or someone like Inspire or even going public, what the impact is of the franchisees. I'd love your take on that. Having been at Dunkin, what kind of questions did you get either at the Bain time or maybe at the Inspire acquisition, because that was more recent and Dunkin was much farther along.
Yeah, I mean, it's always wanting to understand what their play is, right? What their
Yeah.
strategy is, what they want to do, what they're going to do to perhaps challenge the relationship, right? Are they going to take away my support? Am I going to have to deal with a new consultant and build different relationships, right? There's all those concerns that franchisees have, rightfully so, right? When there's some type of ownership change, and so I think the best advice that we were able to give them along the way, and for the most part, it worked well, is just stay the course.
Yeah.
Right. Stay the course. There's going to be great people making good decisions, and they're here to build the business, not to jeopardize it.
Great advice, right? Control what you can control, keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully keep unit economics profitable. Well, let's shift gears to pizza, back to pizza. A former competitor, Little Caesars, you took a national VP role. Can you talk a little bit about the state of the brand and maybe some of the changes you made or programs you implemented that were successful at Little Caesars?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was there for 2.5 years, and as I mentioned, the VP of U.S. development, we kind of had a structure where I was overseeing several different disciplines, and that a counterpart overseeing real estate and development there as we grew the business. I think one of the first things that we worked on doing was really helping our teams to understand how important it was to be field facing, right? Being out in the field, building those relationships, because you're not only recruiting externally, you're recruiting internally, right, to build the brand. And so, building the relationships, understanding what motivates franchisees, why they may not be growing, how can we help them to grow, right, is just as important as going out there and holding seminars and markets to educate new franchisees and things like that. So those are certainly some, both on the real estate side and on the franchise development side that we made. I think one of the biggest things that I feel that we left an impact on was we created what was called the Elevate design, which was the first new image at Little Caesars in over 10 years. The brand had been talking about it for years, but we were able to put together some great designs, get some buy-in from leadership and franchisees, and brought the idea to life. And so we started designing new stores earlier in 25, and we're building a remodel plan as I left the company. But all the credit, if I can, is to plug Julie Blue, who is in charge of architecture at Little Caesars. Her and her team did a wonderful job pulling that over the finish line.
That's great. And I love your reference to, not only getting leadership and your team's, collaborative buy-in and go ahead, but the franchisees, because ultimately, right, they have to accept or, be willing to invest in that new format. What
100%.
advice do you have for folks in that role trying to balance that need?
It is, I mean, in almost everything you do, right? Okay, let's face it, sometimes there are one-way decisions, right, that a franchisor either feels that they have to make or they want to make. But if you can get franchisee buy-in, to get 100% franchisee buy-in on anything is always monumental, right? Everybody's got a personality, but to get buy-in just makes everything so much easier, and it makes the process go much more streamlined and the impact that much greater because everybody's got their hand on the ball. Hugely important.
Well, I've heard from others in that position that many times in doing that and seeking that buy-in or even innovating, you often work with some of the larger franchisee groups. Is that the case? And do you find success as a way to test balloons and get their support as leaders of the franchisees for a brand?
It is. It's very important to do that, but it's also important to try and seek out a cross-sectional representation, right? Because like in any system, you've got smaller franchisees too, and the needs and life cycles are sometimes very different from the
Yeah.
large franchisee groups to the small ones. So I think if you can build a cross section of franchisees that are counseling the brand and working with the brand, I think it goes that much further.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And important, right, to spread it out. Well, you've had such great, wonderful experience at some large legacy brands, as well as Little Caesars or as well as emerging brands. Before we head into your current role at Bobby's, what's how do you compare those two experiences of growing a brand that's established in legacy and then also trying to grow an emerging concept and help really
Yeah.
get it to scale?
Yeah, I think, and again, before we get to Bobby's, right, we had, very different with all the brands that I've been with.
Yeah.
So if I think about, Domino's, right, was and is the giant of the pizza segment, very established, but growth was very much driven from within.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, leveraging those relationships and strong operations to develop incremental units was the key there. At Dunkin, it was a story really of two very different brands, right? We were born here in Massachusetts, not far from the studio there, right? And so the brand in the Northeast and even the Mid-Atlantic was very established early, but when you went and moved west, the recognition of the brand was very different. So people didn't see us as a beverage brand, but a donut brand.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we had to rejigger our approach to entering the West several different times before we were successful there, right? So sometimes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's trial and error. And then with Little Caesars, and again, I'm just trying to go through the increments here. Like, we were a very established brand, but very established in the trade areas we were very comfortable with. So we had to figure out how to venture into different types of trade areas that maybe we hadn't in the past, and how do we educate guests in those trade areas. So the wheels are always going in terms of how you have to do things differently. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, your answer points out, I could have asked the question better, realize that even within, quote, legacy brands, there's revitalization and growth, and maybe the same playbook does work with relationships and being smart. Because I do recall the days of Dunkin' moving west, and, a store in Cleveland, Ohio, or even as it went west, is not 60 or 70% coffee like it is, in the Northeast. So that's great insight. Well, let's go to Bobby's. Today, Bobby's Burgers, and now the Chief Development Officer. What excited you about joining the brand? And what was the state of the brand when you joined?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here a pretty short time, right? So I joined in June, at the beginning of June of this year. It's Bobby Flay.
Yeah.
Right. That's the first, and that's, by the way, that's what drew my attention, and that's what drives our consumers' attention. Right? Is it's Bobby Flay. Everybody relates to Bobby. My grandmother can watch Bobby, watches Bobby. My kids watch Bobby. Right? He's kind of the people's chef out there. Right. So, I couldn't help but listen when I heard it was Bobby Flay, and after they got my attention with Bobby, look, meeting the team, understanding the operations, understanding the thoughtfulness that they had put into every aspect of the restaurant and the operations. And then obviously sampling the product and what I think is the best tasting burger out there, and the sheer opportunity. I decided that I had to take this leap to join this great emerging brand.
Interesting. You're right. It presents a different challenge and conversation, I'm sure, with franchisees and customers when you have a personality like Bobby. But it comes down to the product still has to be good and great, and have the ability to scale it, no matter who the name is on the restaurant. Well, what do you what markets or regions or challenges are you focused on as you try to scale the brand today?
I would say this. So we're not focused on specific markets. We're focused on the best operators.
Gotcha. Tell me about that.
And are matching. Yeah. So we're trying to match up the best operators to the opportunities that we have with those operators. So to be more specific, we've announced deals in Salt Lake and Phoenix, and recently a 65 restaurant deal in Canada. Which are with tremendous operators. And we're going to announce a few more soon here in the Mid-Atlantic. And I think that tells you that we're not restricted to where we want to go. Yeah. We just want the best operators and developers for the Bobby's Burgers by Bobby Flay brand.
Well, let's dig into that because it's interesting. A lot of brands and some brands who maybe fail in their growth strategy are tied to markets and number of units, and you're focused on the quality of the operator and matching it. Well, let's talk from your perspective and your experience in the past and now. What makes some of those operators come to the top of the list and get your attention? And are you talking to multi-brand operators who have done it before? Tell us about that. How should we think about the
Yeah.
expansion?
Yeah, it is a mix, right? And always the first description I say is great ones, right? We want great ones, and I don't want to pigeon them into a very specific, restaurant type or quick service restaurant type or fast casual restaurant type. We want great operators that understand running an organization, right? Understand, dealing with guests, understanding managing staff, right? And certainly we want multi-unit, multi-brand operators if that's possible
Yeah.
in an area, but it's not a must, right? Because again, I can get a great operator, I can get the best that might not have multi-brand experience, but has multi-unit experience. So we're not looking to just eliminate a candidate just because of one of those elements. So obviously we look for them to have a current organization in the geographies that they want to grow in. And if they want to grow in a different geography, we want to certainly understand what does that organization look like? Who's going to be living in the market? How are they tied to the organization? The whole 9 yards.
Well, I love your openness to different formats based on the operator, right? Not being
Mhm.
tied to certain formats at the stage of the growth, and not everybody does that. Well, you talked a little bit, Patrick, early on when you were doing your due diligence and met Bobby and tasted the product, and then ultimately it was the huge opportunity. Talk a little bit about that, and what's the runway and the white space for the brand, or how do you view the opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it's just as I said, it's massive opportunity. We're in a space that we believe has tremendous growth, both from a traditional and a non-traditional perspective. And it's a streamlined operation, easy to run, and so therefore we believe that there's not anywhere in the continental U.S. or Canada that we can't scale in at this point. And so, like I said earlier, we're not fixated on a very specific geography.
Sure.
We're entertaining franchisees from anywhere in the U.S. at this point.
Well, I mean, a competitive marketplace in burger QSR and burger rather in the United States. Help us understand the secret sauce and what makes it stand out. If someone who may think, "Oh, wow, it's a crowded space," but it really points to that, innovation and strong management teams, can find ways and create opportunities. What is it about specifically that, and you talked about the simplicity, but help our readers if they haven't been in a Bobby's, what they would expect and
Yeah,
why it's different.
yeah.
Or listeners,
Yeah.
sorry.
So, yeah, absolutely. I'll start with kind of the behind the counter.
Yeah.
So Bobby's Burgers has a 400 square foot engine of a kitchen, right? And it's a machine. It's innovative. It's built to pump out quality product, fresh product, never frozen. All orders are made to order. So all product is made to order. It's burgers, fries, shakes, onion rings. You can substitute a burger with a chicken sandwich. We have a fried chicken
Yeah.
sandwich. We have an unbelievable veggie burger. That veggie burger actually was Bobby's recipe on Beat Bobby Flay. Somebody challenged him to a veggie
Really?
burger, and yeah, he did. And so the team figured out how to replicate it. I think the other thing that's hugely differentiated with us is Bobby is our R&D department, and
Interesting.
and so yeah, so you want to talk about being able to talk to a franchise candidate about Bobby and his involvement. We can't change the amount of salt on a burger unless Bobby and his team say, yeah, change the amount of salt on that burger, because they are so passionate about the quality of the product that goes out the door. So that to me sets us apart significantly.
Those are great examples, and I think gives us an idea why you're so excited about the opportunity, Patrick. Now, you've been, I know, in leadership roles and a mentor to many, executives and rising stars, and at a lot of different levels and roles. What advice can you give to, and do you give to younger professionals in, franchise development or in franchise consumer brands, multi-unit retail operations? What advice do you give?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would even be limited to that, right?
Yeah.
So, but excuse me. I think the best advice that I would give anybody is to be a trusted advisor,
Yeah.
um, both within your discipline and without. So you always try and understand other point of views, right? Try and understand multiple perspectives of any situation, and when you do that, whether it's with franchisees, with colleagues, with anybody you encounter, that's going to grow to mentorship. Like people are going to seek you out to try and understand what your thoughts are on a situation. So I think, trusted is probably the first keyword, and then really making a concentrated effort to understand situationally things from a lot of different perspectives. I think that's probably some of the best advice I could give.
You're right. It cuts across, franchising roles and at any point in your career, and that's just being inclusive for a lot of different viewpoints can serve us all well. Looking back, can you point to any mentors you had and maybe some of the best advice they gave you, and maybe that was it, but any mentors that you really look back on and really helped you in your career?
There's a lot of them. There's always one mentor that always stands out to me, and he's a mentor to many of us. His name is Grant Benson.
Yeah.
So Grant retired from Inspire a few years back, and he was a development leader, operations leader for many, many, many years at Dunkin, and his tree is impressive, right?
Yeah.
The people that he mentored have gone on to do great things, and whenever Grant would gather a new team, and I think this is a great thing, right? He would gather a new team, and I think I probably witnessed this, I don't know, a dozen times throughout the years. Added a new team, whatever. Yeah. He would share a deck. He'd put together a deck, and he'd share expectations and what he wanted the team to be known for, and things like that. What he was about, and one of the things and one of those characteristics that he always shared was to be boringly credible. And by that he didn't want anybody second guessing, what you were trying to project, what you were trying to forecast, that whatever you said you were going to do, you were going to do. And you were going to do it when you said you were going to do it. And just that kind of mentorship just always sticks with me. And I relay that to the teams I work with as well.
Great advice, and you used the word I was going to use. It. His coaching tree is pretty expansive, so to speak.
Yeah,
lot of colleagues in great roles. Well, let's shift a little bit to the industry right now, and in franchising and QSR. What are you seeing in the next 5 years? Whether it's technology, what should we be aware of from your seat for the landscape?
Yeah, I mean, technology is going to be at the top of the list all the time, right? Yeah. Because we don't even know where that's going to go in 5 years. It's going to be a little insane. But so technology will be always at the top of the list. Understanding where the competitors are, right? Certainly important. But underneath technology, right? I think value, right, is just going to continue to be extremely important. And a lot of people associate value with just cost. A price, and it doesn't just mean price. It's the overall experience, right? It's the food quality, the experience, the convenience, and the price. And when you package all that up and get a fair experience for a fair value, I think that's where the majority of consumers need to get. And so that will always play a role. It plays a role today, and I think over the next 5 years, it's going to play a very significant role as well.
Right. And you define it well, which is it's more than just price, and I love that because it talks about experience and quality and from a customer's viewpoint. So, well, when you're talking to franchisees today, and there's many challenges, whether it's labor or real estate. Capital, what are you hearing that most about, lately? Anything we're missing, or what's on top of mind of franchisees these days? And I know it depends on the brand, but can you highlight a few things?
Well, it's yes, and yes, yes. Right? To everything you just mentioned. There's no question, right? I mean, those are the three big things you always hear about, right? So labor continues to be an issue, right? Not just the supply of labor, but the continuation of rising wages, right? All boats rise. So, even if you're in a higher minimum wage area, everybody right next door to you is going to have to raise their wages in order to compete. As a franchisor, you always need to be figuring out how to be more efficient with your labor, right? Look at your operations, look at your kitchen, figuring out how we need to be more efficient. And real estate just, it still has not retracted the way I think people thought it should retract. And capital, capital's not cheap. So there's so many headwinds right now that counting pennies is really important.
Yeah.
Right? Because pennies add up to dollars. And so, anywhere where you can nip and tuck on real estate, on capital, on labor, those are things that you need to take advantage of because it does add up.
So focus on that P&L and, the devil's in the details. You're right. Small things can add up. If you send 10 cents per item and you've got a lot of units as a franchisee, you can really, impact your financial statements. If you could give, let's talk one piece of advice to franchisors at any level or stage they're trying to attract the next generation of franchisees. And we've talked to some CEOs and brands and a movement to attract, younger, right? And younger potential franchisees earlier in their careers. What advice do you have for franchisors?
I don't know that it's I don't know if the advice I would give, I'm not saying it's the wrong advice, but I don't know if the advice I would give is go for younger.
Yeah.
I do I love seeing some of the minds out there, right, that have gone away to school and gotten their secondary degrees, and then are coming back into the industry and trying to reshape the way that looks. It's pretty cool to see that. Yeah. But I think as a franchisor, you just need to make sure that you have the entire package, right? Not just the product or the design that you put out there, but the entire support network, right? The market planning, the real estate, the training, and then the operation support, not only leading into openings, but post openings. I think offering that entire package and feeling proud of that package that you can put into front of franchise groups is really the best advice I would give.
And I think that cuts both ways, Patrick, to the franchisees evaluating brands, right? Do the franchisors offer that package, right? So if they're making a selection and really to dig deep in what the franchisor is providing, their field experience, do they have the mindset like you that, be in the store? So I think that's great advice for both franchisors and franchisees. All right.
Yeah, you're right. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I hope you saw it, but we're going to do something new where we have a quick fire round, lightning round, so to speak. So just a one word or short answer to the questions. You can pass if you want. We usually have some sports stuff in there. I don't know if we do now, okay. But
you can surprise me.
All right. So let's go with one word to describe Domino's Pizza.
Okay, I'm going to cheat right out of the gate. Digital genius.
That's
genius. 2 words, but yeah, exactly. Whatever they touch digitally, they're pretty awesome at.
It's interesting, right? You were there. That they were more a digital, technology company earlier than a lot of people outside Domino's and that was in the region or in the in the environment realized, right?
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were working, on one-to-one marketing campaigns before anybody else, maybe not anybody else, but they were far ahead of their time when we were, in restaurants working on databases, trying to figure out how to one-to-one market, right? Mm-hmm. Because they had the information for consumers that they were delivering to, right? It was pretty wild. And then they just built it from there.
All right, we'll go one word for Dunkin. From your perspective right now.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna go to the consumer side on Dunkin' and say it's a cult following, right? You're all Dunkin' or you're not. Yeah. It's a cult.
You mean you're not going to be walking around with a Dunkin' cup and then the other competitor, a Starbucks, right? It's one or the other, right?
Nah, it's one or the other. Yeah, that's right.
Let's jump for Bobby's Burgers. One word.
Bold. We're bold. Bold. Bold flavors, bold approach. Yeah, so bold.
Oh, I love it. And, we see a lot of it, and we're trying to dispel myths about franchising here on Stars of Franchising and in our institute and at Babson. Can you highlight a biggest myth or a myth, about franchising that you like to bust? Give us one.
I if I have time, I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah, please. Let's hear it.
But it is. Listen, I would. It's about like franchising being a business in a box. When I was with Dunkin and I was leading the franchising team, I can't tell you how many candidates that I tried to talk out of going into Dunkin as a place to retire. Right. Because, hey, I want to invest in this and in my retirement and, let it be a cash flow cow for me. It's not going to work that way. Right. When you're building the business, you are all hands on deck and you're the guy they call and you're the ones that they're going to call at 3 a.m. if the baker doesn't show up. Right. Yeah. So I think overall it's not a business where you think it's just going to manage itself. You've got to be so actively involved in it. Even though all the systems are there, you've got to be very involved in the business.
Oh, that's a gold mine of advice because you hear a lot of potential franchisees, and sometimes they're told, oh, it's turnkey or you don't have to really be in the store. And so dispelling that myth, I think, is huge. And I'll share a story without, naming his name, and him as a 30-plus unit operator. And I called him at that 2-3 years ago. A lot of stores you're thinking, he's not in his store. What are you doing? I'm making frozen drinks. My high schooler or my team didn't show up. But you're right. You're the your name's on the lease and the door. So that's great.
Not on.
All right. I don't even need if I know the answer to ask this. But go to morning coffee, Dunkin', Starbucks, or something else.
Well, for about 20 years it was Dunkin'. Okay. Right.
It could be something else.
I would say that. But what's funny? I live in Southeast Pennsylvania. Yeah. I can't walk out my front door without tripping over a Wawa.
I was just going to say,
it's Wawa more often than not.
And it's decent coffee. It's good coffee, right?
It is. You got to make it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to prepare it yourself, unlike the other brands. But if you're if you grew up on Dunkin', you don't understand that. You don't understand making. And I was actually drinking Wawa before I joined Dunkin', and then understood what the recipe is and then went back to making it myself. So I was able to translate it.
Good stuff. Well, let's do a little personal fun. We hear you're a homemade winemaker. Is that true?
Yeah, me and a team. Yes.
Okay, you got a team. All right.
A team of good friends. Good friends are yes, we make wine.
Do you have a favorite wine you've made and meal pairing that we need to know about that's a go-to if you're going to try to showcase what you guys are creating?
Oh gosh. We've made about 8 different vintages right now. They're all reds, by the way.
Okay, all reds. Okay.
Whites are a little bit finicky, and so we're doing all reds. I would say it's and our brand is called Grape Garage. So I think it's probably a Grape Garage Petite Syrah with maybe a good slice of pizza.
There we go. I love it. We'll have to, get us the order form for that. All right, so let's end on something personal. I know you're a father of 3. Maybe share how fatherhood and your family life has shaped you as a leader and how you bring that to the game and the field every day. How's being a father shaped you as a leader over the years?
I shared a little while ago about Grant Benson, the way he introduced himself to teams. And I do the same thing, right? It's one of those things you figure out, do I want to do that? Do I not want to do that? But one of the things that I always share with my teams day one is that family is the most important thing you have, right? So it's family first. And if you don't prioritize your family and create a balanced family life, you're going to end up having a difficult time at work. At some point, that it's going to have a tough time coming together. So, I always say, take care of the big rocks. We're going to understand that, right? Take care of the family, and then all the rest will come together. So, somebody gave me that advice years ago, and I hold it true to myself, and I hold my teams accountable for it too.
I love it. And I love how you share it with your team. And I think that's a great message to end on, Patrick. We loved having you on Stars of Franchise. Welcome you to Babson sometime in the near future, hopefully, and we can continue our collaboration. And I've had a lot of respect for you over the years and really appreciate you making time to share some wisdom and guide those on this journey in franchising leadership, winemaking, and more. So thanks so much.
Ab, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Take good care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stars of Franchising.
Stars of Franchising was produced at Babson College, engineered by Travis Gray. Karen Soa is our guest coordinator, and music by Ralph Taylor.
If you like Stars of Franchising, be sure to review us wherever you get your podcasts and spread the word and share these stories any way you can.